Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're going to take a look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Duane Weed.
Hello, my name is Duane, and I'm the host and the producer of the Discover Montcalm podcast, and I am out discovering things today. Not too far from my studio is another studio called the Bear Den from Bear Mark Productions. I'm here with Mark Lavengood. He is the owner, musician, studio recorder. He's done a lot of things in his life, and that's why we're here. We're going to talk to him. But before we do, don't forget you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Discover Montcalm podcast. Go and like us and follow us, engage, share our stuff. You can also go to discovermontcalmpodcast.com, catch out all the episodes. We've got over 80 of them already, and we're still going, and we haven't even touched the surface of what's available here in Montcalm County, like Mark's studio called the Bear Den. So Mark, thank you for letting me come in here.
Wow, Duane, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate the good work you do with your podcast for, the greater Montcalm community. So yeah, it's an honor.
We're having fun, and it's amazing that we're probably 7 miles apart and really didn't know much about each other. And we were at the Greenville Area Chamber of Commerce's Business After Hours at WGLM, and I walked up to him and I was just going to introduce myself. He looked at my shirt and he goes, "I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you." And I says, "Well, I want to talk to you."
Yes.
Because you had Sunshine Acres on the back of your...
Yeah, the Smiling Acres.
Smiling Acres, I'm sorry, Smiling Acres. And I thought, we need to connect, and within a week, we're now talking.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, I was jamming back on his drum set in his studio, and, we're going to get in all that right now. You actually grew up in the greater Grand Rapids area.
Yeah. I grew up in Comstock Park, Michigan, just north of Grand Rapids. Graduated from CPHS and went off to Alma College shortly thereafter before pursuing the life of a musical troubadour. Yeah, but CP, man, it's the community. I chose to build my homestead and have the hub in the center of my career be near family, so that it could not be hard to be around as much as I can be, while also being as active as I am with the music scene.
And you've got kids under 10, so they need you around.
Yeah,
they need
sure.
you around, and we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if it wasn't for our families.
Yeah,
we have to have support at home.
Yeah,
we have to have support at home.
100.
And I know that all of our stories can kind of interweave here and there, but when did little Mark find out that music might be the way that you wanted to get into it?
Wow, yeah. So, my pops is, a lifelong classic rock shredder. So I always grew up with music around, the family, around the house. And Mom is, Bruce Springsteen's biggest fan,
Okay.
And so, it really, music is the soundtrack of our lives. It's always playing, and, we're never not thinking of a song in our head to, amp us up or to, bring us down or whatever we're, trying to tune into on the feeling spectrum. And music was always there with me too. But in terms of pursuing it out of passion for performance, that came through hanging out with some of my buddies in high school.
Yep.
I was in the band. My brother was a percussionist, so I was, a huge fan of my brother and wanted to do everything he did. And so that got me into band. And then in high school, I was a scholar athlete, and it just didn't fit in my timeline and schedule. I was an athlete first and foremost, so my band director didn't necessarily like that. And it just, was a conflict of interest in terms of, being first chair in band or being a starting athlete. And for me, I just loved it. I loved the community. I loved the vibe, the people in the percussion section. I'm still lifelong friends with a lot of those folks. And hold no, negative energy or ill will toward, my band director. I get it from someone who's trying to drive the ship of something. You want people to be all in as much as possible. And no, and then shortly after band, I started playing drums with my buddies. We were wrestling teammates, and so that just kind of started the succession of opportunities for performing.
And you get out and you perform for the first time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it finds its hook.
Yeah.
It finds its hook. I talk about music like therapy. And the older I get, the more I come to realize that how much it is therapy.
Yeah, 100%.
It's cheaper than a shrink. It really is.
Yeah.
It's cheaper than a shrink, but the life of a musician, you can go down some pretty dark paths if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So you started drumming, you're hanging out with your buddies. You mentioned you went to Alma.
Yep.
How did you decide that the music industry was where you wanted to go? Give us a little background.
Yeah, so I went to Alma and I studied Spanish and International Business Administration, and all the while those were my real formative years of cutting my teeth as a performer, learning instruments. After teaching myself how to play drum set for a couple years in high school, I picked up the acoustic guitar, and then after playing that for about a year, I started, having interest in playing other instruments, and, music is a language, and so once you learn one instrument, it's easier to learn another, and you start to find how there's a lot of similarities between a lot of instruments in terms of the music theory,
I get it.
String tuning, and at the end of the day, I really truly believe it's just about hours behind the wheel and under the hood, practicing, learning whatever songs you want to learn, and so I was going to Alma and kind of cutting my teeth, learning these instruments, playing music with my buddies, and then after graduating, a year after, I was working part-time paying the bills, and I sort of had this epiphany where I just felt so compelled that music was what I want to do for my profession, and it also aligned with my vocation. And I wanted to, dedicate myself to pursuing that path, and it just struck me, and so from that moment on, I started, trying to play as much as possible, trying to make as much money through music, outlets, more than anything else, and, shortly thereafter started touring full time and meeting other bands and collaborating and just doing the thing,
So your music tastes are all over.
Yes.
Absolutely. While we were here, you picked up the bass, you sat behind the drums, you've got keyboards back there. I noticed you got a keyboard right underneath your, mixing console here. What was it? Was it a banjo or a dobro or something?
Oh, the mandolin.
Mandolin.
But I do play banjo and dobro as well.
So, while we're here and while I'm setting up, he's over here just going, which is cool because, I guess as a producer, recording studio, you don't necessarily have to know how to play everything, but you have to understand music theory. Yeah. And how it relates and how this goes to this and blending and that's the difference between the amateurs and the pros.
Yeah.
When it comes right down to it. I want to take a quick pause here to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back after this. We'd like to thank our sponsors. West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions is your perfect choice for managed IT, website design, website hosting, and consulting services. WMTDS.com, 616-485-7600. Custom vinyl signs and Busy Bee Embroidery and Gifts is your one-stop shop for embroidery, vinyl, screen printing, and engraving needs. Go to cbsdbusybees.com or call 989-261-7600. 7446. And DW Video, your film and videotape specialist. They design websites and business videos that tell and share your story. dwvideo.com, 231-250-9624. Now, back to our podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Discover Montcalm podcast. I'd like to thank again my sponsors, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, Busy Bees, and DW Video for what they're doing for all of this. I have Mark with me we're in the Bear Den right now. It's a recording studio outside of Coral. And as I get to know Mark a little bit more, he's kind of got his fingers in a lot of things that are music. But before we get into that, you were in Grand Rapids, Comstock Park area, and you came up, you told me earlier, you came up into the Coral area in 2019.
Yeah.
What brought you here, and what vision did you finally decide that you're going to take what probably was an old shed or an outbuilding and say, I'm putting my studio here?
Yeah.
Tell me let's go back to 2019 and move forward in that.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of my early years after deciding I wanted to be a touring, full-time musician. I linked up with Lindsay Lou and the Flatbellies. She's out of Nashville now, going by just Lindsay Lou. And we were touring nationally, internationally, largely driven by our own ambition and will to put it to the test. And then, at the end of, my time touring full-time with the project, I started to have children of my own and was really looking for like a central hub to, switch from like living on the road to switch to living, back near, my family, and also somewhere near international airport where I could still, travel out of to tour and or, driving, of course.
And I'll tell you what, here outside of Coral, I mean, it's where the deer, and I won't say antelope, but it's kind of where the deer and the antelope play.
Yes.
You could see turkeys out here. You're probably going to see all types of wildlife, and you can look around, and what a great creative space.
Yeah.
Because if you're having a bad day, you just walk outside and just listen.
Yeah.
I noticed there's woods, there's fields.
Yeah.
So in 2019, you came here to kind of do the family and start the recording studio. Did you have a recording studio down in the Grand Rapids area at that time?
I always had a rig and like a small setup to be able to record remotely and fly overdubs in for projects when that was the work I was doing. And then, the alternative to that would just be flying in real time and recording somewhere, with the project on site. But there's a lot of ways to cut things up, and so sometimes it's more efficient on time and the budget for projects to just request overdubs. I like to do it all, but yeah. So I had like a small stash of gear that was professional enough to record on any album really and send it in. But after 2019, we were looking for a place to have the home base, got pre-approved for a loan. So I was just looking for a spot that was near Grand Rapids, close to the airport, in the country. Ideally had a barn on it, and some acres.
Well, you got that big barn over here. I'm sure for what, a couple $100,000 you could put a nice studio over there.
I know, that's what I'm talking about. I get done building this, spot out, and this is it was an outbuilding. The previous owners worked on cars in here, just like fixing up cars, doing all the car work.
Have you noticed I'm real good at spending somebody else's money?
Yes.
Spending somebody else. So you're recording here, you're doing some things, you got your fingers in a local festival, you have the studio here, you go out and you perform. But let's talk about the Bear Den. And before we get into that, I keep my head is just going all over the place. How did it become the Bear Den?
Wow, yeah. So
I love stories.
Yeah. One of my nicknames. This right after graduating, from Alma, I started, finding part-time jobs, and my whole prerogative was, if you're going to give your time away to pay your bills, find a spot that pays fair, that you can make as much money as you try to make, and then also that is a good company and has like cool people involved in it, you know. So that was my criteria for working anywhere, you know. And I went and applied at Founders Brewing Company back in the early days, right before it moved to the building it's at now. And ended up getting the job. And after I got done with the interview, the kitchen manager, Justin Galinsky, still a homie to this day, his art is actually featured on some of the collages throughout the studio. And he went in for a handshake. He's like, "Hey, great job, Mario." I was like, "Bring it in, brother," and gave him a big old bear hug. And so once I started working there, he's introducing me to everyone at Founders as Huggy Bear.
A Huggy Bear.
So it's one of my monikers and nicknames. And now, for a long time, there was like there were a large amount of folks in the Michigan music scene who also went to Founders who didn't know me by my real name, who only knew me as Huggy Bear. You know?
Okay, so you get this, and now it's got to be nicknamed.
So I started my music business company. I'm like Bear Mark. I like that, like a watermark, Bear Mark Productions. You know, it's a lot of things.
And you got a website. You got
BearMarkProductions.com.
Okay, we definitely want to be promoting that.
Yes.
So through BearMarkProductions.com, you offer a lot of things. I'm sure you probably work with bands, individual artists, and that kind. How does somebody book time with you?
Anyone can reach out to me via the socials or my website, you know, hashtag ain't hard to find, but marklavengood.com has links to all of my socials. It's Mark with a K, Lavengood, like lavender, but good.
Okay.
Lavengood.
And we'll have that marked right on the page the whole time.
Awesome. But yeah, I've got, all the socials out there, and, I'm taking solicitations for anyone who's looking to record singles, albums, demos for anything in particular. I do a lot of different work. Sometimes the gig is me producing and recording and engineering everything, and it's just one artist with their song. Other times it's a band who has everything done. They just need, a space and an engineer, so depending on what the project needs.
If you're in music, call you.
Yeah. Hit me up if you're trying to record.
Because I think that's the bottom line. Now, another part of, I look at it as many tools in your toolbox.
Yes.
Sometimes the studio might be slow, but you might be doing this, or you might be doing that, or maybe you're just dropping some tracks in for some other studio somewhere else.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of different tools in the toolbox to make it work. You were telling me before we went into this interview that you also are like a promoter. You can, if somebody contacts you that's in the industry, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I like to serve as an ambassador for some of the organizations and institutions that I work with. Sometimes it might be a festival operation, all sorts of different opportunities. But ultimately, I just really thrive in serving the causes that I believe in, and that also need a vessel to help amplify the message that they're trying to serve.
Sure.
You mentioned the music festival, Smiling Acres Music Festival.
Yep.
So I'm the entertainment director there, but I also do sponsorship fundraising. So I lead the sponsorship program that we have. That's essentially like a year-round advertising campaign through our channels, our socials.
And stay tuned. We're going to be doing a story on that because, through Mark, not only did I discover this, I also discovered the festival.
Yes.
And, that's the nice thing about collaboration.
Yeah.
We all know people.
Yep.
And I have a gift to gab. You're welcome, or it's a curse. I don't know how that works. But the idea that I'm inquisitive about what's going on, and I want to be a conversation, not an interrogation.
Yeah.
I want to know the why. That's why we started this interview with, how did you get in start? What was Little Mark doing? How did Little Mark get inspired by music? All the way up to Huggy Bear and the Bear Den and the festivals. So people can get in touch with you. Any advice to somebody out there that's going, I've been playing guitar, I write some of my own stuff, but I don't know if I'm good enough, or, I don't know how to get about this, and it's got to be expensive, right?
Yeah.
It could be, but what's your advice to somebody in that era or that space that you could maybe give them some tips?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think that's the $1 million question, and I'll say, like we were talking earlier, I made a statement, music is currency. And, what I meant by that is like, there's a lot of different ways to make money with your music. And so with that, I highly implore all artists who are interested in, sustaining their career or even making any money from their music, if that's your prerogative, go check out, what that even means. Ari Herstand, the new music industry, is a great tool for that. There's, we live in the digital age, so like everyone can learn how to reverse engineer anything,
Right.
And so, that's one thing, like the, making money from it, but the other element, like we were saying, is like it serves for so many more purposes, not just the commercial elements, it serves as therapy, it serves as an outlet, and so like if someone is trying to pay their bills and monetize their music, I, highly encourage you to really be about the music first and foremost. If you try to be about making as much money as possible through music, it might reflect that. It might be a little too commercial, a little too, just like, thin. I don't know what that means, but like if on the other side,
Stay with your true passion. And
stay with your true passion.
I read something the other day
Yeah.
on Sylvester Stallone, and he was homeless.
Yeah.
I mean, he hit rock bottom, and he got inspired by a fight that he had watched, and wrote Rocky.
Yeah.
And was offered like $125,000 for the script. Some studio got with him. They really liked the concept, but he said, "There's one caveat.
I gotta be the actor.
I got to be an actor."
Yes, sir.
And they said no.
Yeah.
And then they came back with $350,000.
Yeah.
Nope. But they wanted to, and he ended up selling it for like $35,000 to be the actor.
Right.
And we all know what happened there.
Yeah.
So don't give up on your dreams, but it's not an easy path.
Yeah.
No matter
that level of conviction, though, like that's like, in that circumstance, and that is what I'm getting at, is like you have to believe in yourself even when everyone thinks otherwise, or when no one might be on the same plane as you. So it's a very fine line to ride, because you feel like, where is everyone else's support? I've been doing this for all my life, and I still, don't have too much to show for it, but, a repertoire and catalog of songs, like even still, the time horizon can be 1 year, it can be 30 years.
Right.
I know a homie who sold his masters in publishing to an album that he wrote in the 70s because some music rep found it in a thrift store on vinyl.
Yep.
Looked at it and it looked cool, so he took it home. Of course, that music rep was, in the sync licensed music industry, and they, once you have your model and know your framework, what you're looking for when you're in a thrift store.
well,
in that
it's who you
circumstance.
know, what you know, and it's making those
Yeah.
connections. And if somebody's interested in, getting in touch with you, you've got connections, but you got to be real.
Yeah.
It isn't like, okay, in we're going to cut something today, and in 2 weeks you're going to get some $100,000 check.
Yeah.
Let's be real about this.
Yeah.
Starving artist comes to my mind, but yet it's those people that just stay with it.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to have a day job to get this ball rolling.
Yeah. And that's good. It's good. You gotta be able to pay your bills. That brings us to the next question. Is like, well, what is money? How are you paying your bills?
Exactly.
How do you make the most money with your time? And what do you want to choose to do? Because like spending all your time writing music can be highly profitable if you know how to make it work for you. But like if you only do that and you don't have other money coming in yet to pay your bills, then so a lot of it is like life situations and setups, which unfortunately aren't like heavily like we as a society aren't heavily educated as to how to create our own means of living while having the wherewithal of like life's lessons and
Which I know the music industry has changed. It's changed a lot. We're probably not going to see a Led Zeppelin. we're not going to see another Beatles the way the music industry is looking today.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it won't cycle back, but do you see that? I mean, because now everything's digital. It's easy to put something out there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, being monetized for it is another, and you can help with that.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody comes to you, that's part of your service fee.
Yeah. Well, part of what I offer, because like I mentioned, I do a lot of things like, are we recording? Here's the price point. Are we, doing a business consultation? Here's how you can learn about ways to monetize your music from everything you have to what you might have. So there's a lot of different options on the table, but, I like to give as much as possible with everyone that chooses to come and work with me. And so oftentimes, even if we are just working on an EP, like I'm going to give you, advice on so as to how to go about, and 9 times out of 10, all the artists want this information too. Like, how do I go about releasing this? What DSP should I use? How do I go about merchandising it? How much do all these things cost? What do I charge? And there's
a process.
It is a large amount of information for the industry. So
I think if you look at any artist out there, from Taylor Swift right on down to whomever, it didn't happen overnight.
No, yeah.
It didn't happen.
And it didn't
overnight.
happen alone. There's teams of people doing specific tasks. So then, to be able to deduce all the work behind the scenes to create the success of, the artists, but like ultimately, it's the craft. Like without the craft, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So like the best thing you can do is hone your craft, spend your time believing in it. And again, even if no one else is there cheering you on, like, and that's the hardest thing to do, but like you come to find like, it might not be worth something today, but later on, like there's going to be people that will gravitate around it. Yeah. And as an artist, independent artist, you really only need like 1,000 people to sustain your career to buy whatever
I've heard that before.
It doesn't take a lot of people.
And then if that goes, so now you've got social media presence that you got to get out, and you got to just keep that ball rolling. Keep that ball rolling. We've talked a lot, and what I tell all my guests is that there's a point where we'll probably ask you back, because maybe in a year or so we'll see where you're at, what else is going on. I know that we're going to be talking about the festival, and who knows what else we might be talking about in the future. So you get 2 chatty guys, and we don't know who we're going to bring along, but that is the essence of Discover Montcalm, because it takes all kinds.
Yeah.
It takes the entrepreneur. It takes the people that are building crafts in their home, have a 3D printer, and they're selling stuff, to manufacturing. And oh my goodness, agriculture is huge in this county.
Yeah.
You go with where your strengths are. So before I sign off here, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to touch on before we close out this episode?
Shucks, if anybody's interested in listening more, you can check me out on all streaming platforms. I know we're going to do another recording on this, but the Smiling Acres Music Festival is near and dear to my heart since its inception, and I couldn't be more honored and privileged to be on the committee.
And that's outside of Trufant.
That's
in
it's
the
just 10 minutes from where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, so it's another one of those things that, again, there's a lot of things that we can discover. So you said on all your socials, repeat your website again and a phone number, and so that way those that are listening to it as a podcast and they're not on YouTube watching this, what's your phone number and what's your website again? Yeah, you can find all my contact information at marklavengood.com, marklavengood.com. My email is contact@marklavengood.com, and not hard to find, and here in it to win it. You'll find me at Montcalm Community College once a week with our Spectrum of Art music series. Yeah, and shout out to the Centurions. Yeah, you were like, hey, get over there, but it's right when I'm teaching. I know. I'm right next door. I can walk across. I got the series we're doing. He's like, but I'm teaching every single one of your series. Yeah, I can't. I can just walk across Heritage Acres or Heritage Village there, and come to it. But things will come. Yeah, we'll do more events. Things will come. So, sure. Discover Montcalm Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can go to discovermontcalmpodcast.com and catch up on all the episodes. Share them, like them, get it out there. The more we share, the more we care. And I always say sharing is caring. And these businesses and these organizations in Montcalm County, I put it out there, share it, let people know, because you can run into people like Mark who have their fingers in a little bit of everything. And I think that's most anybody, whether you're a farmer or whatever, you've got your fingers in a lot of things. So thank you again
Duane,
for your time
thank you,
today.
Brother. Appreciate it, man.
I'm Duane from dwvideo.com, also discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Hit me up if you'd like me to tell your story just like this. I think that you have a story to tell. I want to tell it. Thank you very much, and remember to buy and shop locally. That's a wrap. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's how we do it, Duane.
Yeah.
Come on, brother.
Hey.
Connect and subscribe to Discover Montcalm Podcast at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast. To be featured in an upcoming show, contact Duane at 231-250-9624. Remember to subscribe at discovermontcalmpodcast.com.